A passenger on the Delta Air Lines flight that crash-landed at Toronto Pearson International Airport has shared a harrowing account of his terrifying ordeal. The incident, which occurred during the aircraft's attempted landing on the runway, saw the plane flip upside down after a violent and unexpected crash. As news of the accident spread, the story of the passenger's experience offered a gripping and detailed perspective on the sheer chaos and intense emotions that unfolded in those crucial moments. The flight, Delta Air Lines Flight 1212, was making its descent into Toronto from Atlanta. The weather at the airport was reportedly challenging, with gusty winds and an overcast sky, conditions that can often complicate landings. Passengers aboard the plane were mostly unaware of the gravity of the situation until the final moments before the crash. According to the passenger's account, the plane had started to shake violently, a sure sign of turbulence, but no one had anticipated what was about to unfold. The moment of the crash was described as surreal. 1 minute, the plane was descending normally, and the next, it seemed as though the entire aircraft was thrown into a chaotic state. There was a huge jolt, the passenger recalled, describing the sharp lurch that left everyone on board momentarily disoriented. For many, it felt as though the plane had dropped out of the sky, and there was a palpable sense of fear as the cabin filled with screams and confusion. The sudden loss of altitude was disorienting, and people instinctively braced themselves, unsure of what was happening. In those terrifying moments, the reality of the crash began to set in. The passenger explained how the plane tilted violently, first toward one side and then flipping upside down. The sensation was described as akin to a roller coaster ride, but with none of the thrill and all of the terror. As the aircraft spiraled, passengers were thrown about the cabin, and overhead compartments flew open, sending bags and loose items scattering. The cabin filled with panic, and there was a frantic scramble to secure oneself. "I was just holding on to the armrests, not knowing what was happening or if we were going to make it," the passenger said. There was a moment when the world seemed to slow down. For some, it felt as if time had stretched to an eternity. The flight attendants, trained to remain calm in the face of crisis, were also caught off guard by the severity of the crash. According to the passenger, one flight attendant, visibly shaken, was trying to reassure everyone, though her voice betrayed a deep sense of concern. "It was like we were all in a dream," the passenger remarked. "Everyone was just holding on, hoping we would come out of it alive." When the plane finally came to a stop, there was an eerie silence that settled over the cabin. Despite the chaos that had unfolded just moments before, there was an odd stillness, almost as if passengers were waiting for something else to happen. Then the realization set in: they had survived. The relief was palpable, but the shock and trauma of the crash were still sinking in. The plane, which had flipped upside down upon landing, was now perched precariously, with its nose buried in the runway, the wings askew. The once calm atmosphere of a typical landing had transformed into a scene of confusion and devastation. For the passengers, the aftermath of the crash was almost as harrowing as the event itself. Emergency responders quickly descended upon the scene, and first responders could be seen rushing to the plane to begin the evacuation. The passenger described the chaos on the tarmac, with fire trucks, ambulances, and other emergency vehicles arriving almost immediately after the plane came to a stop. In the midst of this, some passengers were still trying to process what had just occurred, while others were helping one another, offering support and comfort amid the panic. There were a few tense moments as the emergency personnel worked to assess the situation. As is standard procedure in such cases, passengers were asked to remain calm while the crew and responders ensured their safety. The fact that there were no immediate reports of fatalities was a testament to the professionalism of the flight crew and the emergency responders. Many passengers, though still shaken, managed to exit the plane unscathed, albeit emotionally traumatized by the experience. While most passengers were eventually able to walk away from the crash, the emotional toll of the event was far from over. The passenger noted that, despite surviving the incident, many people were visibly shaken, some even breaking down in tears as they processed the enormity of what had just occurred. The psychological impact of such an event often lingers long after the physical wounds have healed. The sheer unpredictability of the crash left many passengers questioning the safety of air travel, even though the likelihood of such an accident is statistically rare. The investigation into the cause of the crash was swift, with aviation authorities immediately launching a full inquiry. Preliminary reports suggested that the incident was caused by a combination of factors, including challenging weather conditions and a mechanical failure that led to the plane's inability to land normally. While the investigation was still ongoing, the flight's black box was recovered, and aviation experts began analyzing the data to determine the precise cause of the crash. In the days following the accident, the airline issued a statement expressing its regret and reassuring passengers that their safety was a top priority. Delta Air Lines pledged full cooperation with the investigation and promised to provide support to the affected passengers. The company offered counseling services for those who had been traumatized by the event and worked to provide answers regarding the circumstances surrounding the crash. Despite the traumatic nature of the experience, the passenger emphasized how grateful he was to have made it through the ordeal. "I never thought I'd be in a plane crash, let alone walk away from it," he said, reflecting on the surreal nature of the event. His words resonated with many others who had experienced the same terrifying moments. For the survivors, it was a sobering reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictable nature of travel. Yet, as is often the case in such situations, the human spirit showed resilience. Many of the passengers, though deeply affected by the crash, expressed a desire to continue flying, determined not to let the fear of the unknown control their lives. While the emotional scars from the crash would take time to heal, the event also served as a reminder of the incredible advancements in aviation safety. The fact that all passengers survived such a harrowing crash was a testament to the incredible safety standards and technological innovations in modern air travel. Had the accident occurred a few decades ago, the outcome may have been much different. The crash landing, though terrifying, demonstrated just how far aviation safety has come, with newer aircraft designs, improved safety protocols, and better trained crews all playing a significant role in preventing fatalities in such incidents. As the investigation into the crash continued, more details about the circumstances surrounding the event began to emerge. It became clear that the flight crew had followed emergency procedures to the best of their ability, attempting to land safely despite the difficulties they faced.